I've got it. I've got it.
All right, welcome everybody to Now That's Debatable. Today we do not have a guest. We're doing something not necessarily super different. It kind of reminds me of the olden days back when we first started, kind of getting our feet wet with the podcast. But we're going to be doing a breakdown of kind of a quote / meme / really famous evangelical series that has been touted specifically by Frank Turek. And the short quote is, "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist." However, I think Frank Turek broke that down from a quote from Lee Strobel, which I will read the entirety of a little bit later in the show. So before I get our faces up on the screen, Triboulet, if you could go ahead and give us a intro to our lovely host and sponsor,
yes.
Media, and we'll
Now That's Debatable. Now That's Debatable. Sponsored by #Relic Media. If you have a new podcast, you're trying to get more listeners, you want to get more viewership, hit us up. We'll get you in contact with Relic Media. You can join the Relic Media family.
Dope, easy enough. I'm gonna go ahead and get our faces up on the screen. Sorry, just doing a little changing around of how things look.
Yeah.
So the chat is not supposed to have the templates in there. I don't know if it's going to change, but we'll see.
Are we on Facebook?
Yeah, we should be across the board. We should be live.
Where I see it's on YouTube.
I'm going to delete the chat for a second and then add the chat back in because that's being weird. Works for me.
Well, so it's not dead air.
Yeah. Take over.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. Now I see it's on Facebook.
Dead air.
Okay, cool. Echoing. So, yeah, it was because I had just was playing through the sounds playing through my laptop and going to my mic, and then coming back out my laptop, and then go back to my mic, and then coming back to the laptop. Yeah. So, yeah. So. All right, cool. People are already talking.
That was me putting in the test.
Oh, really? And that's you, Eden?
No.
Jay? So much. Who's all that?
Bro, I told you that was the test. It's gonna fix itself in a second.
Okay. Oh, hey guys. Whoever's watching.
You're just crazy. That's all.
Oh, okay.
I told you you're crazy. Anyway, so we're gonna do a video. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because it's an interesting one. And would you like me to read the entire quote that I think it came from?
Yeah, read the whole thing because I don't think I've heard the quote.
Okay, the quote is from Lee Strobel, who's a Christian author. He's got a couple books out there. I've read a few of them. Some people are big fans. The quote is, quote, "To continue in atheism, I would need to believe that nothing produces everything, non-life produces life, randomness produces fine-tuning, chaos produces information, unconsciousness produces consciousness, and non-reason produces reason. I simply didn't have that much faith."
That's weird because, like, the nothing in the quote addressed atheism. It sounds very much like he had all these assumptions about atheists that he just kind of just threw in there. Like, for instance, he said, I think it was the beginning of the quote is, what was it? In order to be an atheist, you have to believe that everything came from nothing.
Yeah, I have to believe that nothing produces everything.
So I guess this is a misunderstanding of the Big Bang. So atheism has no position on any particular standard of cosmology. Like, you don't have to accept the standard model in order to be an atheist, right? So there were atheists before we knew about the expansion of the universe and general relativity. So it sounds like he just doesn't know what these things are. He says he has to believe that information came from non-information or chaos.
Non-life produces life, randomness produces fine-tuning, chaos produces information, unconsciousness produces consciousness, and non-reason produces reason.
Let's dissect this whole quote really quick.
Okay, I'm actually going to work on, see if I can get it up on the screen here.
Okay.
That'd be cool.
So he says he has to believe that non-life produces life. I think that was another one of the things, right? So again, that has nothing to do with atheism. That atheism is about not believing in a God. So non-life producing life. This is like abiogenesis, like it's a mixture of chemistry and biology. So I guess I hear Christians like say stuff like this all the time. They say like non-life producing life. Of course it does, right? Of course non-life can produce life. Like we're made of atoms, aren't we? Are atoms alive? Of course not, right? Everything's made of atoms, including like a dead corpse is made of atoms.
Yeah, rocks.
So yes, rocks are made of atoms.
No one considers alive. Made of atoms. Made of the same stuff that we're made of. Yeah.
So all those things are not alive, yet we're made of those things. So of course non-life can produce life, because literally every living thing is an example of life, of non-living things coming together to make a living thing. Every living thing is an example of that. But is the quote on the
quote should be up on the screen.
Okay. Let me see if I can. Let me pull this up. Yeah. Yeah, this is just a stupid quote. Like it sounds like he doesn't know what atheism is. Non-reason produces reason. I'm not even sure how to address that. Non-reason produces reason. We reason from our brain. I don't even know what to do with that one. He says, what unconsciousness produces consciousness. Of course it does, right? Atoms aren't conscious, yet they can come together and make a person who's conscious. Bro, this is just such a stupid quote. I've never heard of this before.
Oh,
hey, Facade, you still there?
Yeah, I'm glad I can introduce you. I'm sure you've heard the quote, "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist," though, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is where it's derivative from, and if you look into a little bit of, if you Google that, or you YouTube it specifically, you'll see a ton of videos by a very famous preacher named Frank Turek. And I think he's kind of taken this quote and kind of made it his motto and made it his kind of anthem, if you will. And I wanted to take a few minutes in the video just to kind of break down the concept of this video and what it says and like basically what it means. And I feel like we could go into the entire quote here, but I put up on the screen, "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist," just under our little video, and then I put the whole quote by Lee Strobel up on the screen. So depending on how much time you want to dedicate to the video, I think we should tackle, one or both of them.
Okay, yeah. But for the video.
No. The videos are hours long. We don't have time.
Oh, yeah, okay. Gotcha.
We don't have time for that. Although, if anyone is interested, you watch this and you want to go watch his entire documentary series on "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist" once it's all said and done, there's a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Google that phrase, or YouTube that phrase, you'll get to that video way before you get to ours. You'll get to probably hundreds of videos before you get to ours, because it's very, very popular by Frank Turek. But I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of break down this statement, because I see this and I see memes about this on Facebook a lot, and like theological and religious versus like atheist groups and chats and debate centers, I guess, if you will, where although I'm not typically impressed with the level of arguments that are presented, I occasionally scroll through for a good chuckle. So do you think this is at all a compelling argument? The statement that I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
No, because it doesn't require any faith at all. It's just not being convinced of a certain thing. And so it's not even the assertion that you're actually have been acquainted with the evidence of it, right? Like it's just not being convinced of it. So it's not even saying that I have examined the evidence of God and I've come to the conclusion that there isn't one. No, it's just the non-belief. So like I may or may have not actually thought about this. I may or may not have actually looked at any of the evidence. It doesn't require like any sort of faith or rationale at all.
Okay. So one of the critiques I see of making such an argument, like one you would have just presented, is essentially one of the critiques is that we don't have words and we don't have terms and phrases for other things specifically that you don't believe in. So, for instance, like, do you believe there are aliens on Earth?
No.
Okay, but there's no term like like alienist, if you
non-terrestrial alienist.
Yeah, or extraterrestrialismist. So there's no term for that. So it seems that like we make special exceptions for something to kind of promote God.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is, or why do you think there's a need for a special saying for something else you don't believe in? So if you don't believe there's aliens on Earth, it's not like you're touting this label of a extraterrestrialist.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm no etymologist, but from my understanding, this is what I was told, that the word atheist it derived during like the first century in Rome, in the persecution of the Christians. It's what the Romans were calling the Christians for not believing in the Roman gods. They were calling them atheists because there was a particular God that they didn't believe in. That's what my understanding of how that word came about.
Gotcha. I mean, I could tell you, at least as far as how we use the word, the structural origin is Greek.
Mm-hmm.
Because the word theos or theos is the word for God, and means without.
Gotcha.
And ism, which is a suffix, is one who or that which. So you would say that not ism is not one who or that which. Sorry, that's ist. One who or that which does not believe in God would be an atheist. And you would say that that is ism. So anything that is, you would say that is without God.
Yeah.
So that's the strict origin of the word. We got a comment from Corey. It says, "What up?" And no, it's not. I don't know what you're referring to. If you would like to clarify, we will address it on screen.
Yeah.
In this call. But yeah, so I mean, like,
what up, Corey?
I guess to go kind of back in that circle and to kind of wrap back into that loop is why do you have a specific term for not believing in God versus you don't have a specific term for not believing in aliens on Earth?
Yeah, I think so. In our culture, it's kind of the norm that you believe in some sort of God or some sort of higher power. I know normally, even when I get in discussions like this, like even like as secular as like the army is people are still shocked when like if I say that I'm atheist. So I think it's just like so even though it's becoming more normal, it's still just expected to believe in something, you know. And so maybe that's why they have a word for that. But I mean, it's a good point. Why even have it?
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like that's one of the main criticisms. I don't think it takes too much away from the actual point, but I think it is interesting to point out that there's a specific word for not believing in God versus specific other words for not believing in, fairies or magic. Or
do you think it's helpful to have a term for not believing in God?
I mean, in the sense of it might help in language description, but not in the sense of, reality, I guess, or in the sense of like philosophy. I don't think it matters too much.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, it tends to lead to confusion. Like, because I don't know how many times I've been in conversations, whereas when they find out that I'm an atheist, they throw out all the isms at me. Right? They'll say I follow Marxism and cultural relativism and social Darwinism. I mean, just any ism that you can think of, like everything. And they'll just make all these assumptions about my beliefs. And I feel like just because of the baggage that word has, it does more harm than good than saying it,
Yeah,
so like
basically,
a lot of times
by using the word atheism, typically in your experience, people automatically associate that with other things that are not even in the same realm.
Yes, and so it might be best to just avoid the term altogether, especially if you're looking to have an honest conversation, because a lot of times when you use that word, like the guard goes up. Like now we're not even talking. Like now it's like I am trying to unconvince them of whatever belief they may hold, and that's not even necessarily the case. Like we could like just having an honest conversation. Like I'm not trying to deconvert every person I talk to.
Yeah,
even when we're talking about
to take the more jerk side of things, I'll go the other way and saying that I've had many a conversation, and then when it becomes apparent that I'm an atheist, or if they ask and I use the term atheist, essentially it switches from a conversation to me being preached at. And if I wanted to get preached at, I go to a church. I mean, like, it's fine if you go to church. That's your prerogative. You do whatever the heck you want to do in your time. However, if I am having a genuine conversation with you and we're having a discourse back and forth, and we're interlocutors in a philosophical or otherwise topic of conversation, and you just randomly start preaching at me, I've lost respect for you in that moment. Because what you're doing is you've gone from this person that I can have an intellectual conversation with to this person that's trying to prove me wrong or try to quote-unquote save me or whatever they feel their religion is necessary to do. And it takes away from that honest conversation that I've had and turns it into, okay, now I just have to kind of sit here and be berated by whatever religion you believe in.
Corey cleared up his point too. He was talking about the people's need to label things, and so I mean I mostly agree.
Yeah, I mean I don't disagree with that. I would say that and the wonderful thing about language is that we come up with lots of words. We come up with new words very regularly. And matter of fact, we add new words to the dictionary almost daily. But what people do is they typically conflate words.
Yeah.
Especially when they're ignorant. And I don't mean that in the sense of sheer stupidity. I genuinely mean ignorance as uninformed or not as knowledgeable. And so the whole purpose of our show, at least when I originally created it, was just to have intellectual discussions on things that were topics of debate. And we were would sit down and we would actually discuss beforehand what topics we wanted to talk about. We would research them. We would look up articles. We would pull up scientific journals or books on philosophy, etc., to have these conversations in advance. You know, like, it's not like we just went into them blind. And I think maybe not everyone was aware of that, but like when we get guests on the show, and if it seems like we're belittling or berating the guest, or that we're just like kind of dominating a conversation, you have to know it's because we're prepared for the topic that we're going to talk about, and we hope that our interlocutors are prepared for the conversation that we're having. That's kind of the whole point. It's not that, like, at no time have Triboulet or I ever sat down and had a discussion of, like, let's see how badly we can make this guest look, or how stupid we can make someone look, or how, you know, how bad we can crush this conversation. That's not the whole point. The whole point was to have an honest and open intellectual conversation. And then when you hear stuff like, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, you have someone that's either, I would say, kind of falls in one of probably two camps, and there may be more, but I feel like the typical camp is one of two things. People that think that this is a good, genuine argument and response to things, and people that are trolling. And sometimes, I think people that have a good, honest, I think this is a good intellectual thing, may be using it to troll. I say that because, like, at this point, I've seen enough debates with Frank Turek that I know he's been corrected on something. I know he's been corrected on this. And just to be very, very clear, the reason I have such a opposition to the phrase, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, is because of how words work. So faith, typically, especially in the realm of religion, is believing in something without good reason or evidence. Right? You would say you have faith that something can happen without good reason or evidence. And by reason, I don't mean like without cause, I mean without justification. Right?
Yeah.
And without good evidence, not without just evidence, because I mean, like, you could say basically anything is evidence to something else, incorrectly so or incoherently so, but it's possible, right? So if you take atheism at its core and you say that it's the lack of belief in God or disbelief in God, or even if you say it's that I don't think God exists, right? Mm-hmm. To say that you don't have faith to be a person that doesn't know something else, like that's a very silly, convoluted way of looking at it. It's like, hey, I don't know the recipe for pasta, like this particular pasta dish, and you say, I don't have enough faith to make pasta. You'd be like, what?
I don't have enough faith to know what the pasta recipe is.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I don't have enough faith to not know what the pasta recipe is.
Yeah, I don't have enough faith to not know.
Yeah, like, that's kind of incoherent.
Yeah. Corey responded, said that tweet or whatever it is someone trying to take a shot at people who don't believe in God. That statement is ignorant. Yeah, I would agree, except that statement is from a book by Lee Strobel, who's a very pronounced Christian author who wrote several books on converting people to Christianity and how he came out of atheism.
What to me, what's embarrassing is that, like, if atheists were doing these kinds of straw men to Christians, like they just get laughed at. Like imagine if I describe like Christianity, where it's just like it's the belief where a Jewish zombie who's his own father killed himself because a snake told a naked woman to eat a fruit. Like, what if I describe Christianity like that? Like, I wouldn't even be taken seriously. You would say, I'm not coming to this conversation honestly. Yeah, but that's exactly what's going on here. I mean, I can't even call this a good faith attempt. Like, not even close. I mean, he may honestly be trying, but it just sounds like he just didn't even know what the word means. Because I mean, like I was saying earlier, it's like a lot of times when you get in conversations and you pull out that A word, they'll throw out all of these other isms at you because they're making all these assumptions that, you know, you're also a cultural relativist. Hold on one second. What? I think it's over. So, hold on. No. My bad. So, like, yeah. So, like, yeah. So, anyway, they throw all these other isms at you, and it's because they're making a word like more complicated than it actually is. You know, and so like I'm sorry, I got distracted. Lost my train of thought.
Oh, good. I mean, so the long and the short, what makes me so the statement itself perturbs me, but the quote itself perturbs me more, and I think, and I'm not gonna just say that this is what Lee Strobel was doing or is doing or has bad intention or whatever. But Lee Strobel supposedly was an investigative journalist and an atheist who went on a journey to disprove Christianity. Right?
Did he write the case that demands a verdict?
He wrote The Case of Christ, The Case of Faith. I think he wrote maybe Cold Case Christianity. There's like a bunch of them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but anyway, it's this dude that like he wrote.
He was pretending to be a skeptic, pretty much.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna say pretending. Supposedly, he was genuinely an atheist who set out on the course to disprove Christianity.
He was a really bad skeptic,
and the process became a Christian.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so like I'm not gonna like straight bash him and say this dude is lying, or that he is misleading people in the way that he argues or makes statements. But I feel like if you genuinely took this with rationality, if your goal was rationality and your goal was like getting to the end of an argument, then like saying a statement like I don't have enough faith to be an atheist is just like essentially a lie. I don't know a better way to put it. Because if you have enough common sense to know what words mean, you would recognize how ludicrous they are when you say them in that order. It'd be like, I don't have, like I wish I had the ability to smell the color blue. And you'd be like, well, that doesn't make any sense because colors are perceived by vision. So, like, your smell receptors have nothing to go off of. Right? Like, these are two opposite things. They're two things that, like, not opposites, they're both done by senses, but, like, they're two things that are incoherent with each other. And by saying, you don't have enough faith to not believe something, or I don't have enough faith to disbelieve something, or I don't have enough faith to not take a stance on something.
Or to not be convinced of something.
Yeah, it's dishonest. It's dishonest to say that that's a real stance you can take, or that that's a real place you can take, I guess, in the realm of like theism and atheism. The answer is no. This is a kind of an unplanned stream.
Yeah, spare the moment. We had a guest, but we got canceled on last minute. But we're gonna try to get him on Monday, and then we may be streaming Tuesday as well. And then after that, we're gonna take a 6 week sabbatical. I thought it'd be fun to use that word since we're talking about atheism, because I got to go through some training for the Army, so I'm gonna be away for a little bit. So, yep. I wanted to talk about the use of the word faith when he says like, so I don't have enough faith. Because what it does is he recognized that Christianity makes a lot of propositions that can't be supported, so it requires faith, right? And so he'll try to. I think what seems like what he's trying to do is make atheism to be on the same epistemic level, as in you're also using faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what they try to make it seem like it's equal. So like, since you're using faith, there's things that you'd have to justify as well. For instance, where did the universe come from? Even though that has nothing to do with atheism, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and
cosmology and atheism are really different things.
Yes. Yes, I mean, as a matter of fact, the guy who formulated the Big Bang, the guy's literally a priest. He's a preacher. Yeah, who formulated the Big Bang. But I think by putting it on that epistemic level to make it seem like, hey, since we're both using faith, now we both have propositions that we have to positively defend, and that's not the case. And so a lot of people they'll get angry. I've seen like on other shows, like for instance, like Atheist Experience and the Sunday Show, which those are two call-in shows where you can call in and defend your religion against a couple of atheists, right? And so a lot of times people they'll get mad because they won't defend any position. And that's the thing. Like it's not a position. It's not a position on anything. All it is the question: do you believe in God? If the answer isn't yes, then boom, that's it. You're an atheist. There's nothing to defend. It doesn't make any statement about morality. It doesn't make any statement about the nature of existence. No statement about value or anything else. There's no statement about the supernatural. As a matter of fact, the last church that I was going to, when I had already deconverted at this point, I just didn't tell anyone. But when I finally came out, the pastor he was doing a thing that another friend of mine was doing to me yesterday when we were having this conversation. He's throwing all the isms at me, and I explained to him, and he seemed shocked that I explained how you can believe in the supernatural and be an atheist. Not only that, you could actually believe in a 6-day creation. Like you can be a young earth creationist and be an atheist. As long as you don't believe that God did it, is logically consistent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep. I want to expand upon that, and then we can both answer M's question. But just going back, because like this whole topic, it makes me something too. Yeah, we'll get back to both. I promise. But I wanted to. This whole topic just makes me angry. It genuinely makes me angry. And to piggyback on what you were saying, and to kind of take it that next step further, is what. And I'm gonna call them out because they do it the most often. What Christians typically do when they say stuff like this, and then when preachers and pastors go, or when apologists go and they try to defend such a statement, they say this really stupid statement. And I'm saying it's straight up stupid. Is that you have faith every time you go sit down in a chair. You have faith that when you turn your car on, it's gonna start. You have faith that stuff in the fridge is gonna be cold. Yes, and I'm that's stupid.
That's called a reasonable expectation. That's not faith.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's what they like. Specifically, Christians and apologists and preachers do is they get on this train of thought where they're talking about you have faith every time you sit down in a chair that it's going to hold you up. You have faith that gravity is going to take this ball to the ground when you let go of it. That kind of thing. And it's not. And it's not the same expectation or reasonable line of questioning or thought. Because you know what I've done hundreds of times? I've dropped things on the floor. And they've always fallen to the ground. So it's reasonable to assume that the next time I hold something out in front of me and let it go, it's going to fall. Because I've seen it hundreds, if not thousands of times before.
Yeah, right? I mean, at that point, it would take faith to believe that it's not going to fall.
Right.
You know,
so
and
faith
like,
is believing in something
car,
without reason or justification. And the reason and justification I have that something's going to fall to the floor when I let it go is because every time I've done it in the past, it's happened. I've seen it hundreds of thousands of times. And to say, like, oh, when I go and turn my car on, I assume it's going to start. Well, no, because every time I've turned the key in my car, probably very few exceptions, the car started. And when it didn't start, it wasn't that I didn't have enough faith that it was going to start, or that, you know, like something about the whole world changed. Typically, something like the battery being dead, which you could then diagnose, you could figure out. It doesn't take any faith. There's no faith required.
Also, like we, as you know, like we've both had cars that when we turned the ignition, we weren't always sure that thing was gonna start.
Exactly.
So it wasn't the faith. Like a lot of times I go in, like I've had a car. I remember that 2001 Buick, the one that caught on fire when I was in police academy. But I mean, like I was a Christian back then. I'd say a quick prayer.
Oh yeah. Yes, sir. But I didn't have enough faith in some of the cars that I drove that I kept a gallon of oil and a gallon of water in the trunk because that thing be leaking both.
Yeah. I wanted to get to
all right, let's go Corey, then M. Yeah.
He says, now it's hard to read because of the white thing. I think.
Sorry.
It says, if you put Christianity under any kind of scrutiny, it's hard to, bruh. Can you move that?
It's gone.
Okay. It'll take a second before just leave on my part. Okay, here we go. If you put Christianity under any kind of scrutiny, it completely collapses. That's why it's the whole faith of a mustard seed. Yeah, I mean, I agree. So like, I mean, kind of the way that I eventually left, I first ran into this problem back in like 2014 when I started grad school. I was studying public policy, international relations, and I had a huge interest in how religion, specifically Reformed Christianity, intersect with government. And I was seeing some problems. Like I had a pretty thorough understanding of how government worked. I had a pretty thorough moral system, I thought, and how to morally run a government, but the Bible just didn't seem to fit that. And so I started doing like critical analysis on the way government works in the Bible. And I like pumped the brakes. I just stopped. And I was like, wait a minute, if I do this, like I feel like I might wind up leaving Christianity. So I just put it on the shelf and never came back to it. And then I finally addressed it for good in 2018. And I came to the conclusion that the way Romans 13, this the passage in particular that I was having a problem with, that Romans 13 was just wrong. Paul was not addressing government in a godly manner. He got this wrong. And so when I did that, I was throwing out, which we would call it inerrancy. And literally the next week I was an atheist. So what Corey just described, he says under any kind of scrutiny. Yes. Like, so you're talking about, so I was like, what, 28, 29 at the time. So you're talking about almost 3 decades of Christian indoctrination, right? Both parents are preachers. I went to a Christian school all the way up to the 12th grade, then to college. I was surrounded by Christians. And then, all of a sudden, I do a week's worth of critical analysis, and then I'm an atheist. That undid 3 decades of indoctrination. So yes, Corey, I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah, if any kind of scrutiny, it falls apart, and it falls apart fast, very fast.
And when I think just to like piggyback and kind of like play on that a little bit is that very similar deconversion stories, as I'm sure Triboulet is aware, but like people watching may not be. But to kind of piggyback on that is I noticed that you have to kind of remain either ignorant or intentionally like drawn into Christianity to stay there, because the scrutiny comes from outside sources, and you see it, and you see people kind of like the Atheist Experience does, or even like we do on some of our shows, where we take apart some of these arguments for God or arguments for the Bible, etc., and you see people still clinging to them. And so it's really, really strange, because like, even for like us, because like both of us were Christians, and then like leaving it, but like when we were kids, I could tell you right now, we'd be on the other side of this, just like arguing till we're blue in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and like, so, just like back and forth.
And that's why, so like when you're saying like you have to constantly, to be like immersed in this thing, that's why, like, so they're having like, not just Sunday, but Bible study, and then you're having, especially in the reform side of Christianity, like they emphasize the thing of constantly reminding yourself of the gospel, that way you don't forget it. Like, dude, that's indoctrination. Like, how many things that you would say you actually know that you have to constantly remind yourself of? Like, when's the last time that you had to remind yourself of general relativity? Like, yeah, you just, never, oh man, what? I haven't looked at these field equations in months, so I don't believe in them anymore.
I can't remember if the speed of light is constant or not.
Yeah, right. It's like it just doesn't happen. Yeah. Just to jump out of order, but we're gonna jump back in order of the comments. Just Corey, he said, "Yes, this is crazy, airing y'all this way, because y'all was the ones trying to get me in college." Yeah, bro, my bad.
Indoctrination is a key word. Yeah, you're not wrong. Now to go back up to M's first comment. So it says, just a random question, but what do y'all think of the paranormal? I'll let you tackle that one first if you want, or I'll go first. I don't care.
Yeah, I put the paranormal in the same category that I would put God. I don't. I would not assert that there is no such thing. But I have no reason. I have no evidence that it exists. Like, and far as I can tell, like, the paranormal is like the supernatural, right? And it doesn't really interact with nature in a way. Like, I don't have a way to test it.
Well, so for instance, like M mentioned in the next comment, just to kind of clarify, like ghost or demonic activities.
Oh,
so like for instance, possession.
Oh, that's people being possessed
and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I think our modern understanding of psychology completely debunks demon possession and in ghosts and all that type of stuff. I mean, like, so most of these guys who were having these experiences and running out the mouth, I mean, they were having mental illnesses, and they've done several studies on this. Laying hands on a guy and uttering stuff doesn't help. They need help. Like they need like actual
like psychological evaluations, therapy, and perhaps medication, and probably hospitalization.
Yeah,
especially so like, if they're a danger to themselves or others.
Yes, exorcism and stuff like that. Like I don't believe in. I'd put it in just in the same category as anything else, stuff supernatural. It's usually just been a placeholder for things that we don't understand. Like somebody's having some sort of mental illness, or like some sort of like lunacy. Like most of our understanding of what's going on in the mind, it really just came about, like a century ago. But before like the start of like the 20th century, like that's when we really started going like delving into like psychoanalysis. Before then, people would just say, "Oh, he's there's just a demon or something like that," right? So
yeah, and to piggyback on that, and then like it says, even poltergeist, and my answer is going to be yes, even things like poltergeist, which is a technically just the German word for evil spirit. Polter and Geist literally means evil ghost. So the German word poltergeist means evil ghost or evil spirit. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't see good evidence for ghost, and if you think that your consciousness somehow carries over into the next life, I would just straight out deny that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that like something supernatural can't exist. What I will go out on a limb and say that your consciousness will not carry over after you're dead.
I'll say, I had two experiences I like to share briefly.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
There was one experience. This was a bad experience. This was like I was a kid. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I was sleeping. And while I'm asleep, I feel this really cold and large hand grab me by the throat. And I woke up, and I felt it like choking me, right? And I was like, my first instinct, I jumped up and I ran into my parents' room. And at this point, when I'm running in there, I don't know if I felt the sensation of being choked anymore, but I remember being freaked out. And so my mom and dad, they jumped over me and they started praying for me, laying hands and all that kind of stuff or whatever. And I was like, having my hands up, saying Jesus and all that kind of stuff. It was a very weird experience. I didn't even know what to think of it. I still don't know what to think of it. And because I mean, like that definitely happened. And so the thing is, you can't, since I don't have an explanation of it, the answer is I don't have an explanation. It's not this weird thing happened, I don't have an answer, therefore ghosts, therefore demons. So that was a very weird experience. I'm not the only one that had an experience like that. There's several people that have had like so-called supernatural experiences. They don't have an explanation for it. And I don't want to emphasize, if you don't have an explanation, then you don't have an explanation. Not like, I don't know, therefore a demon, right? And so here's another experience that I had. So I was a senior in high school, and I had gotten really serious about my Christianity, and I was like trying to get baptized in the Holy Spirit, like in Acts 2:38, right? So I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with that passage. It's just like it was right when Pentecost had failed, and they heard people speaking in tongues, like in this upper room. And so they asked Peter, like, what do? What should we do? Peter says, repent, be baptized for the forgiveness of sins, and you be filled with the Holy Ghost. And I was trying really hard to get this experience. And so I had this dream, and in my dream, there's my dad is in a dream, and he's talking to this guy. And my dad had like been friends with the guy for like a really long time. And he had just introduced me to him. And so I talked to the guy, and the guy's face is like bright. And so I don't know. I guess that was my mind telling me that it was Jesus or something. And anyway, in a dream, the guy like hugs me, right? And so I felt like this electric feeling throughout my body, and then this gravity like kind of pushing me down, right? And then like I remember waking up, and I see my brother brushing his hair. And so I'm awake at this point, but I'm still having this sensation throughout my body. And then I fall back into the dream, and then the guy's still hugging me, and he lets me go. And then I wake up, and I was like, that was like a weird experience, right? And so I remember my thought was that had to be Jesus that was doing that. Here's the thing. I don't have an explanation for it. Like, I don't know what was going on. I do know, like, your mind, if you really desire something, especially as much as I was desiring that, like, your mind can do things.
Yeah, and so I don't want to discredit either of those things, but I will say that I've read quite a lot on things like because I have a couple sleeping disorders, but like sleep apnea and sleep paralysis, which is really, really interesting. If you're not familiar with sleep paralysis, it's one of the most interesting things I think I've ever read about, because people have dreams that are so inducing and so mind encapsulating that they literally cannot move. And they wake up and they feel sometimes there's demons, or there might be like post-traumatic stress disorder patients, or post-traumatic stress, people that have traumatic stress disorder, and they experience things like captivity or slavery or sexual slavery or demonic possession or incubus or succubus, literally just putting it down. And it quite literally paralyzes people in place. So it's not to discredit those things or just say that's definitely what happened here. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I wasn't there. Even if I was, that doesn't mean I could explain it. It just means that the mind is such a powerful tool that we know things like sleep paralysis do and can occur, and do things like literally paralyze you in place where you can't move. And people that have sleep paralysis can actually go into panic attacks and to short breath, like anxiety attacks, where now they're not only paralyzed in place, but they're having difficulty breathing. They feel like something's compressing them, etc. So it's really, really interesting because the mind is a really fascinating thing. So just to kind of play on that a little bit, which is kind
also,
of... Go ahead.
You got buff as hell.
Oh, yeah, I think it's because my name is on the bottom and you're just taking up most of the screen. Your name's on the top. I mean, I'm not a small dude by any means. I'm not buff like Triboulet over there, but I'm really, really broad. But I've been trying to lose weight, not to get buff by any means, just to kind of get in better shape. But, you know, I can, because I'm a bigger guy and I've always been a bigger guy, I have really broad shoulders. Like I can shove Triboulet around too. So it's what else, and he can shove me. It's not like it's like, you know, whatever. But yeah, we're both pretty big guys.
Yeah. Uh-oh. My wife just commented.
I saw. We can go to that one before we go back up because there was one more thing that was up above that we didn't get to yet. But we can go to that one. I'll read this if you'd like. It says,
sure,
so you put it down to just being made up in your mind because it can't be explained.
No, I'd say I put it as not being explained since it can't be explained. But if we're going to explain it with anything, we're going to explain it, like I would explain it with things that I know that does exist and is capable of doing it. So I know I have a mind. I know my mind can do it. So if anything's like the most likely explanation, it would be that. It wouldn't be a god. It wouldn't be pixies or something like that. Like something that we don't even know exists. Like you're gonna appeal. You're gonna try to. If you have a candidate answer that is capable of explaining the entire incident, then appeal to that. We can't appeal to things that we don't know exist as the causes of things.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that, and again, I'm not saying that my explanation of things like sleep paralysis definitely describe everything that happened or solve everything that's happened to every person in the world. Obviously, I'm not that naive. However, I will say that the mind is a very powerful thing, and it can do things like quite literally put you in a state of paralysis, even though your body is fully capable and functioning. So when you have things like that, it has a very odd sense of what you can and cannot do and what you can and cannot control and what's happening versus what is being produced in your mind. Your mind can fool you, which is, you know, a pretty interesting thing. To go back up, I don't know if you can see it maybe off the screen at this point. The question from M says, just a fun question. Would you visit a well-known super demonic house?
I have.
Yeah, so for instance, there's one really close to where you live.
I did it in California, bro. I did it. So when I was playing rugby, we got drunk in this graveyard off Jack Daniels, and our captain, I'm not going to say his name because now he's a pretty famous person. Like now, I don't want to ruin his reputation, but there's a guy who's making like a lot of headway in like the political conservative movement now. Anyway, he came up with the idea of going into this it was like this hospital for like crazy people,
asylum.
Yes, and we went in there. It was supposedly haunted, and so we went in there.
Just a little context for myself. I live about 20 minutes from Salem, Massachusetts. So I have been to where the Salem witch trials took place. I have been to where the last witch hanging in the United States took place. I live about 20 minutes from there. I hang out, not regularly, but I've been to some of the oldest cemeteries in the United States. The United States as the United States, not United States as former land of Native Americans. Because I live in New England, and it's a quick drive to these places. So, Boston Commons, which is a huge graveyard, I've been there. I've been to where many quote-unquote founding fathers have either died or been tortured, or people have died and been killed. I've been to many battle sites in New England. I've been to where the Salem witch trials were. I live 20 minutes from there. It's a really quick drive. As a matter of fact, when Triboulet came up to visit me not long ago, that cemetery that we went to, like right there, that place is one of the oldest cemeteries in New England. So all these places that have like supposedly ghost stories or being haunted or stuff, like I just live in New England. It's a really old place in the United States. There's stories everywhere. I've never, at least in New England, experienced anything that I would consider like unexplainable. I will say that where I grew up, there was this really, really weird light on the railroad track.
Oh, on the railroad track. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's unexplainable. I don't know how to explain it.
It's
to this day.
It's unexplained, not unexplainable. You don't know. But and that's the thing. That's the thing. So like we can't, like, if we don't have an explanation for something, the only honest answer, the only modest answer is I don't know. We can't throw things in there. We can't just like just throw answers that are just made up without any sort of evidence for it.
And by the way, just to kind of tie this back into what you just said, is that means we don't have faith in something. But that doesn't have anything to do with being an atheist. That's called being a skeptic.
Yes, exactly.
Fun fact.
Yeah, and also like not all atheists are skeptics. Like you hear people say stuff like, I stopped believing in God because my mom died or something like that. Right? That's a pretty stupid reason to not believe in God. So like not so. A lot of times, to bring it back on topic, like a lot of times when people speak of atheists, they kind of throw them in a monolith, and that's not what's going on at all, right? Like all atheists aren't skeptics. Like you have atheists that believes in all types of things that I would also consider irrational. That believe in like P and chakra and astrology and alchemy and all kinds of other
and Bigfoot and Loch Ness and all like magic, like genuine magic, like witchcraft, etc. Like atheists can believe in any of those things as long as, like, by definition, a god isn't involved. There's no contradiction there.
Yeah. M says, so is it fair to say maybe God exists? So I guess it depends on which one. So there's no logical contradiction in the way most gods are presented. The Christian God does have problems. It does have logical contradictions. As does
essentially all Abrahamic gods would fall under the same problem.
Yeah, they would. And so like I would say that one, well, those ones, the Yahweh, the Jesus, or the Allah, or some people think Yahweh and Jesus are the same thing, whatever. Like whatever your belief is. I would say those gods couldn't exist.
I would go a step further and say that most of the Roman and Greek gods also could not exist, given that they were essentially fills and gaps of information that science has then essentially fizzled out. So,
yeah, well, instance,
I mean, Zeus being the god of thunder.
Sure. Yeah, but there's no logical contradiction in the God that's throwing chunks of lightning sticks at people.
Yeah, but I mean, like, given that was the description of the god, and we know that that's not how lightnings form, we would say, obviously he couldn't exist because he's not the one forming the lightning.
Sure, but I'm not sure if that's what. And were you saying like there's no like logical possibility, or are you saying like is like just highly unlikely given what we know about like the laws of nature. Because like I would put those in different categories. Like because I would say like the Abrahamic gods, they violate laws of thought, like laws of logic.
I agree.
Whereas,
but that's why I said I would take it a step further with the Roman and Greek gods because they violate laws of nature.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, they're physical impossibilities, whereas the Abrahamic God it's a physical impossibility as well as a logical absurdity is where I would go. But I mean, there could be like a lesser God or something, or some sort of God or something that exists that I would consider to be a God that's hiding under a rock in another galaxy or something like that. You know, like I have no idea. I have no way to investigate. So sure, there could possibly be being one. He says, well, going based off what you said about not knowing something, the honest answer would be, I don't know. Yeah, sure. So, and so that's, I would put it, if you were to ask me, could there be Santa Claus? So like, depending on like colloquially, I would say, no, there's no Santa Claus. But if you push me, right, and if you want to get like down into the epistemology of it, I'm going to say, I don't know. Because there's no way I could disprove Santa Claus. Right, there's this possibility that I'm just not looking in the right places. Because when we would look for Santa Claus, or when we would look for God, we were going to be using induction, right? And induction requires inductive reasoning. Is when you make you follow how do I phrase this? Like, you make conclusions based off the available evidence. Well, there's always a possibility that I didn't observe everything, right? There's always a possibility that I may have misinterpreted one of my observations. So sure, there could be a God in that sense. There could be a Santa Claus. But like colloquially speaking, if you were to ask me if there's a Santa Claus or a leprechaun or something like that, I would say no, there is no such thing as that.
Yeah. To go back up a few.
What wifey asked.
Yeah, I was gonna say we kind of skipping a little all over. Have y'all watched BuzzFeed Unsolved? I haven't. I don't know if you have. Have you watched BuzzFeed Unsolved?
I've never heard of it.
Me either. I may check it out. I'm always interested in things that are I'm unexplained mysteries and murder mysteries and stuff like that. Always fascinating. Corey said, I completely believe in the paranormal. I've had many of them. I assume you mean paranormal experiences or things that you can't explain. Even Triboulet was talking about some things like that. So that one we tackled already, and then she says, hi guys, and then M said, I was geeking when I saw your wife's comment. Christian wife here, in case you guys didn't know, Triboulet's wife is a Christian. When we had Joe Inslee on, he mentioned that she was a vegan and way more moral than he is, which got quite a few laughs, and it's an accurate statement. So he said he wants to see an episode of where we visit a haunted house, which if we're ever
maybe we can do that.
Yeah, if we're ever in the same neighborhood, we can make that happen. Your wife asked why could they not exist, and I think we tackled a little bit of that on the philosophical side and on the nature side. So
yeah, so it's a logical contradiction. Like for instance, like okay, so think about this: like could a star that burns at 1,000 degrees Kelvin exist? No, right? So like that's a physical impossibility, but it's not a logical impossibility, right? So we know 1,000 degrees Kelvin isn't hot enough to start stellar nuclear synthesis. So a star couldn't exist there. But conceptually, a star could. It doesn't violate any sort of law of thought to think of a star burning at a certain temperature. But now let's say, could a star exist and not exist? Well, now that's incoherent, right? So like you're not violating a law of physics. You're violating a law of logic, whereas it is contradicting itself. And so the Abrahamic gods, the Christian one that I'm most familiar with, has properties that contradict itself. For instance, like you had talked about in the last episode we did when we did the joint episode with quotes and mirrors, right? You talked about God being, you Facade, you had talked about God being perfectly just and perfectly merciful. That makes no sense, right? So because mercy is a suspension of justice, so to be perfectly both is a incoherent statement. Yep. So the Christian God could not be perfectly merciful and perfectly just, because it contradicts itself. And that's just one example. There's a lot of other properties that the Christian God has where that entails contradictions. So there are some philosophers that would say there are contradictions that exist. I don't see any examples of that, and so from my view, if something is incoherent, then it can't exist. Like if it is violating a law of thought, if it's violating identity, excluded middle, or non-contradiction, it cannot exist. That is my view on that.
Yeah, fair enough. The light at those railroad tracks still exists. That's a comment. I saw that. I haven't been and seen them in a long time, but last time I was there, I did look for them. I did see them. I still cannot explain them. Well, going off based on what you said about not knowing something, an honest answer would be, I don't know, so maybe God exists. I think you addressed that one. And then he said, he sort of existed without the myth, but still added him. Saint Nick did exist. Yeah, I mean...
Oh, yeah, we did
Saint Nicholas did.
It was a Turkish saint that went around giving gifts. I mean,
supposedly he went around. Yeah, I mean, even that's been like really, really stretched. So supposedly he went around and threw money down people's chimneys, which is where the whole idea of Santa came from and all that fun stuff.
Yes,
but even that
we're talking about the fat guy the fat guy at the North Pole who can warp space time by wiggling his nose and instantly appear in your house through the chimneys and stuff like that. So like that,
deliver presents to everyone on Earth in a 24-hour period, that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. Except for the poor kids.
Yeah, except for the really poor kids.
Only
providing things for non-things for people that don't believe in Santa or that don't know where Santa is. Yes. So people that live in third world countries that have never heard of Santa don't get visits from him.
M said they documented real paranormal activities. So my question is, how do we know that it's paranormal?
I'll say this, I've seen some things I've seen paranormal, quote unquote, documentaries, if you will. And just to kind of expound, which may help you, because I don't want us going too terribly off the wall on this one, is that they would say things like people have visions or feelings or their sights or sounds, etc., that are unexplained, that have been associated with things like ghosts, hauntings, demons, etc. So that's typically what people mean when they say they've documented.
So I just don't understand. So he gave the example. He says, M says they had a flashlight and asked this demon to turn it on and off. So, all right. So this is Christian Apologist, who's a good friend of mine, and he made this video that he put out earlier today, and he's in the video. He's saying how they found all this archaeological evidence of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And so most of that stuff isn't true. But I didn't even go there. I just looked at the structure of the argument, and I was pointing out, I was like, even if it was the case that they found burned cities in the precise locations described in the Bible, and we confirmed that it happened at those exact times, it wouldn't confirm that God did it. Right? So, and it's the same situation that we have right here. So you have a flashlight, and then you ask a demon to turn it on and off. Right, and then the flashlight turns on and off. How do you know that the demon was responsible? Like, it's, if I were to out this something like that, I mean, that would definitely creep me out, and I'd be like, this requires a more thorough investigation. But I don't see how you could conclude that the demon was responsible for it, because the only observed phenomenon that you have is the flashlight turning on and off.
Just a really quick.
It was turning the light on and off and showed intelligence.
Really quick, and I hate to burst your bubble, but this has actually been debunked since that episode came out. Over 3 years ago, someone debunked it by explaining that essentially with this type of flashlight, which is probably like a mag light or something similar, which has a physical switch that turns the device on and off, and by unscrewing the end cap of the flashlight so it just barely makes a connection, basically any wiggle or move of the flashlight could potentially cause the light to go on and off. They said they've done this trick on this show. It was fully admitted by BuzzFeed that they did it on this show. It's been on many other paranormal shows as well. And they said it's nothing more than a pretty neat trick, because essentially the flashlight's just sometimes getting the electrical connection by having the spring push hard enough on the battery. Sometimes it wasn't. There was no intelligence involved. There was no demon involved. It openly admitted by the staff that made this particular show. Not saying that discounts all demons. I'm saying in this particular case, that's definitely what was happening.
I like to dive, but Emma's kind of bringing up a point that I like to raise. I want to like dive into like epistemology for a little bit. So let's say that I go into a classroom and there's a marker and a whiteboard, and I ask the demon to write his name on the board, right? And so the demon picks up the marker and writes the name Donald Trump. I'm joking. All right. So like the demon writes his name on the board. He spells it out. Right. All right. Now, well, listen, I think I kind of poisoned the well by saying the demon did it. All right. So let's say you ask a demon to write this name on a board. And so then like the marker magically comes up and then a name scribbles on a board, right? Now that would be like crazy, right? Like Facade, you'd be freaked out by that, right? Like you don't know how, but the marker's just moving and writing a name, right?
Yeah, I'd probably be concerned for sure.
So now I want to know, like, how would we conclude that this was the result of a demon?
Well, I'd have to know, for starters, like, what would indicate that it was a demon?
Yes, that'd be a good start, right? Figuring out what's the thing that's typical of demons, like what's the signature of demons that you would expect. We don't really have that available to us. Like I don't see in my scenario, and I think this would be like way stronger scenario than a flashlight just turning on and off, where the marker's magically up and scribbling on the board, right? I don't even see there how you could come to the conclusion that it's a demon. He says, but that's something paranormal. I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I have no idea if it's paranormal. Like, I don't like. How do I know that? How could I rule out that it's just like some advanced technology that somebody's using to trick me? You know, like I have no idea. Like, and I can see why we want to call it paranormal. But here's the thing: so that is a phenomenon that we have no explanation for. So I think the rational thing. He says, "Oh, no." Well, yeah, but like, I mean, it's very tempting to come to the conclusion that it's paranormal, but I wouldn't. I just don't see the epistemic justification for saying that. And it's not saying that it isn't paranormal. What it means is that we're stuck. So, I actually gotta start wrapping up here. Wifey's telling me to get off.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm gonna try something actually. See if I can do this real quick.
But okay, well, while you're doing that, let's quick update for next week's show. So next week, before I get ready to leave for military training, we might be able to stream 2 episodes. So we're gonna try to get Morpheus back on Monday and talk about anarchy. I haven't even asked him this yet, but I'm over here saying it live. But Morpheus, if you see this episode, I'm going to text you in a little bit, try to get you back on Monday. And then we've have on Tuesday, Joseph Jackson and another guy, his friend, who's supposedly like a reformed apologist. He's been in several debates. He's going to supposedly come out here. He's supposed to come on the show and crush my secular worldview. And so I'm looking forward to that. He's come from the same type of Christianity that I came from, Reformed theology. So I'm very familiar with presuppositionalism. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation. So
I don't know if you can see it, but on the screen I have a flashlight, and I am not touching it in any way, but it's flashing. So just a little fun little experiment for you lovely folks at home. That can be done. Pretty interesting. But no, I mean, the long and the short and the whole episode rolled in a nutshell. The reason that we don't have enough faith.
No.
We don't have enough faith to be an atheist is kind of an ironic and poor statement to make. It personally makes me angry. Please don't use it if you know me in person in front of me. I will destroy you. I will not let up. I don't care about your feelings in that moment because you've crossed the line of you're making a very poor argument.
M said nobody. I don't think anybody listening to this that's going to hear this is going to get this except for me and M. But he says, "How about our boy who's a pastor and sells dope? We need that episode." No, bro. That's what I was cracking up at. Oh man.
All right.
Maybe one day we'd like to get him on the show.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're welcoming guests. If you guys want to come on and chat, you have a long time to decide because we're about to go on a long vacation. Yeah. But if you're interested in the meantime, let us know. Reach out, and we will schedule you when he gets back.
Mm-hmm. Get some cocaine and weed selling pastors up here.
Yes, sir.
Jeez, yes, sir. Okay. You're hilarious, bro.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up?
Nope. Thanks for tuning in. I gave him the wrap up for the rundown for what's going to be happening next week. So
so we may see you next week, maybe twice. But we'll see you guys next week. And thanks for tuning in. Catch you on the next one.